I want you to imagine a locked room murder mystery.
Right, the classic setup.
Yeah, exactly. You know the setup.
Yeah.
A body is found, the doors are bolted from the inside, and there is like absolutely no trace of the killer anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular room, the murder weapon isn't a candlestick. It's not a dagger.
Or, a vial of rare, untraceable poison.
Right, not poison. The murder weapon, and this is Walt-Ligotti weapon, the murder weapon is a philosophical contradiction.
Which is such a crazy concept. I mean, it's a thought so fundamentally incompatible with another thought that holding them both in your mind at the exact same time generates a physical force.
A physical force that literally kills you.
Yeah, it literally kills you.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are looking at a stack of incredibly bizarre, mind-bending source material. It's a surreal, metafictional text titled Friction of Ineffable by Max and Claude.
And it is definitely a trip.
Oh, absolutely. It's structured across 7 distinct sections, which the authors call apertures. And it basically drops us into a universe where abstract ideas, the kind of dense theoretical stuff you might debate in a late-night college dorm room, become tangible, biological, and, well, highly lethal forces.
And, that lethality is really what makes this text so compelling. I mean, we usually treat philosophy as just an intellectual exercise, right? It's safely contained in our heads.
Safe? Exactly. Like, it can't hurt you.
Exactly. But this narrative removes that safety net completely. It asks, well, what if the universe enforced logic physically?
Wow.
What if, a hypocritical thought caused a fatal heart attack?
That is terrifying.
It is. By making philosophy biological, the authors really force us to examine the very real psychological toll of our own cognitive dissonance.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to explore this completely surreal landscape and figure out the mechanics of this world.
Right, because there are rules.
Yeah, there are rules. We need to understand why absolute truth is a death sentence here. And most importantly, we're going to extract the survival guide that this text offers.
Because we all need it.
We do.
Yeah.
Because even if our thoughts don't cause us to, spontaneously combust, you and I both hold wildly incompatible ideas in our daily lives.
Oh, all the time.
We are constantly navigating friction, and this text might actually have the secret to doing that sustainably.
Well, the best place to start untangling that friction is at the text's opening crime scene. We are introduced to the impossible death of Professor Desmond Essence.
Desmond Essence. Right.
Yeah, and this happens in an estate called the Villa Zarathustra.
And the physical evidence at this scene immediately establishes that the laws of physics have been hijacked by the laws of philosophy.
Totally.
So Inspector Morrow arrives to investigate the professor's death, and the coroner hits her with data that just shouldn't exist.
And it makes no sense.
Right. The body's cellular degradation, like the actual rotting of the cells, suggests that Professor Essence died on a Tuesday.
Okay.
However, the rigor mortis firmly indicates he died on Sunday.
Wait, really? It's off by days.
Yes. And the environment around the body is just as compromised. The garden where he is found is behaving paradoxically.
How so?
There are flowers that are somehow in the process of blooming and dying in the exact same instant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there is a sundial in the center of the garden that is casting shadows in every possible direction at once, which basically renders time completely meaningless.
Which begs the question, what kind of weapon does that? How does a person's body get confused about what day it died?
Exactly. I mean, it comes down to the core concept of the entire narrative, which is philosophical friction.
Right, the friction.
Yeah. So Professor Essence was a man deeply committed to a specific worldview. He believed that the universe was pure, unmitigated chaos.
Just total chaos.
Total. He taught that there was no divine design, no underlying order, just random, senseless matter crashing into other random, senseless matter.
I mean, that sounds like a fairly standard, if somewhat depressing, existential outlook.
Yeah, true.
A lot of people believe the universe is chaotic without breaking the space-time continuum.
But Professor Essence didn't just passively believe it. He actively studied it. And that is where the fatal contradiction lies.
Oh, I see.
He believed the universe was pure chaos. Yet he simultaneously believed that he, Professor Desmond Essence, was a unified, rational, coherent self who could investigate and categorize that chaos. He was applying rigorous, orderly logic to prove that order doesn't exist.
He was trying to measure water
With the net. Exactly.
Classic way to visualize it. I mean, he was a walking paradox.
And in the universe of friction of ineffable, when you hold two deeply irreconcilable truths and force them to grind against each other, They generate heat.
It is a literal thermodynamic reaction in the brain and the body.
Yes, the sheer friction of trying to be a rational observer of an irrational universe caused his heart to seize. He wasn't poisoned or stabbed. The clash of his own beliefs generated so much heat that it killed him.
This brings us to the lead investigator, Inspector Morrow, whose entire reality is about to crumble.
Completely tremble.
She is a veteran detective. I mean, she has solved 47 murders. She represents the ultimate triumph of logic and order over human messiness.
Right, the classic rational detective.
Exactly. But then she interviews a graduate student named Walt-Ligotti, who is just wandering around the estate.
And Walt-Ligotti freely confesses, right?
Yeah, freely confesses to murdering the professor simply by walking up to him and pointing out this contradiction out loud.
What's fascinating here is how the text uses this confession to completely deconstruct the concept of the detective genre.
Absolutely. Walt-Ligotti doesn't view the death as a crime. They view it as an inevitable philosophical reaction.
Right?
And by explaining this, Walt-Ligotti forces Inspector Morrow to realize that her entire profession is what the text calls a violence against chaos.
That phrase, violence against chaos, that really stuck with me.
It's powerful.
It makes me think of, like, a software patch. You have a computer system, it glitches, and a developer sends in a patch to fix the code so the user can go back to their work. A detective is basically deployed into society to fix a glitch called a murder.
And think about the fundamental assumption behind a software patch. It assumes that the base operating system is supposed to run flawlessly.
Oh, gee.
If there is an error, it's an anomaly, it's a mistake that needs to be overwritten so the user feels safe and secure in the system again.
Wait, but if the operating system of the universe is actually fundamentally broken, I mean, if it's built out of raw chaos, like Essence believed,
Yeah.
isn't fixing the glitch just lying to the user?
That is exactly the devastating realization that hits Inspector Morrow. She sees that to solve a crime is to impose a false, comforting order on a universe that is inherently disordered.
Wow.
By arresting someone, naming a murderer, and closing a file, the detective tells society a comforting bedtime story.
Like everything is okay now.
Exactly. The story says, the chaos was temporary, I have removed the bad apple, the world makes sense again.
So she realizes her resolution is actually the illusion. The crime isn't the anomaly. The peaceful, orderly society is the anomaly.
Yep.
So, confronted with the fact that her life's work is basically a pacifier for the masses, she drops the case.
She just walks away.
Yeah, she labels the file philosophical complications and walks away, choosing to just witness the chaos of the world rather than forcing it into a neat little box.
And her surrender acts as a catalyst. The illusion of order has been punctured at Villa Zarathustra.
Right.
And once that vacuum is created, the lethal contagion of absolute truth begins to spread far beyond the estate.
Triggering a wave of impossible, ideologically driven fatalities.
Exactly. Metaphor literally becomes fatal biology.
So if giving up the illusion of order makes you a passive observer like Inspector Morrow, what happens to the people who actively try to embrace this newly revealed contradictory universe?
The text gives us some incredible case studies for this, starting with Professor Agatha Nietzsche.
Agatha Nietzsche. Her death perfectly illustrates the physical mechanics of this phenomenon.
It really does. She is found incinerated in a locked room.
Incinerating.
Yeah, she combusted because she was attempting a mental fusion that the human brain apparently cannot sustain.
What was she trying to fuse?
Well, she was trying to embody the analytical, solution-demanding archetype of an Agatha Christie detective.
Okay, the Agatha part.
Right. While simultaneously holding the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, specifically his concept of eternal recurrence and the embrace of pure, unresolvable chaos.
Wait, eternal recurrence, that's the idea that the universe and all its events has already occurred and will recur ad infinitum, right?
Exactly. It's a complete surrender to the cyclical, senseless churn of existence.
So you cannot be an Agatha Christie detective demanding a final, neat resolution to a mystery if you also believe the mystery is destined to repeat itself forever without any ultimate moral meaning.
You just can't. The friction between absolute closure and absolute infinite chaos generated so much literal thermal energy that she burned to ash.
And if burning up isn't visceral enough, we have the case of Jean Sartre.
Oh, this one is wild. And the text explicitly notes he is of no relation to the historical Jean-Paul Sartre, though he clearly shares his commitment to existentialism.
Right, right. This character dies from a lethal dose of absolute radical freedom.
This is where the biology of the book gets wonderfully surreal. In existentialism, radical freedom means you are entirely responsible for your choices.
There's no human nature, no destiny compelling you to do anything.
Right, and this character takes that concept down to the cellular level.
He literally withdraws his consent for his internal organs to coordinate with one another.
Which is just insane to think about.
He becomes aware that his heart pumping blood to his lungs is a biological imperative, and he views that imperative as a form of tyranny.
He proves that even an autonomic nervous system is a choice.
So by refusing to consent to that coordination, his cells just stop talking to each other.
He frees his biology from the fascism of function. His liver is liberated from his kidneys. To him, the coordinated human body is an oppressive regime, and death is the ultimate act of liberation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to stop and challenge this.
Sure.
Choosing to have your organs fail to prove a point sounds less like ultimate freedom and more like, I don't know, a convoluted, pretentious suicide.
It does sound like that.
Isn't this just a fancy way of giving up? Like, what is the actual value in dying just to win a philosophical argument with your own spleen?
I mean, it seems absurd from the outside, absolutely. But within the logic of the text, it is an exploration of the tension between authenticity and bad faith.
Authenticity and bad faith.
Now, this is a crucial concept. In existential philosophy, bad faith is the phenomenon of lying to yourself to avoid the terrifying burden of your own freedom.
I mean, give me a real-world equivalent of that. What does bad faith look like for someone listening to this right now?
Imagine someone sitting in traffic, commuting to a job they despise.
Okay.
They tell themselves, I have to do this, I have a mortgage, I have no other choice. That is bad faith. They do have a choice. They could abandon their car on the highway, walk into the woods, and become a scavenger.
That would be intense.
It would be a difficult, socially disastrous choice, but the option exists. By pretending they are forced into their current life, they filter out the terrifying vertigo of realizing they're choosing their misery every single day.
We filter out the horror of our own freedom so we can actually function in society.
Precisely. We use bad faith as a shield.
But characters like Agatha Nietzsche and Jean Sartre,
they refuse the shield. They refuse the comfortable lies we all tell ourselves. They wanted to live with absolute authenticity.
The text is basically arguing that to experience reality without any filters, to stare directly into the unmitigated chaos, contradiction, and radical freedom of existence is inherently lethal.
Yes, they didn't give up. They chose the purity of one perfect, unfiltered moment over a lifetime of self-deception.
Which is incredibly poetic, but practically useless if you actually want to, stay alive.
Very true.
If thinking clearly and holding the raw truth literally makes you spontaneously combust or shuts down your organs, what is the alternative? Are we doomed to either die of authenticity or live a life of complete self-deception?
The narrative recognizes that dilemma, which brings us to the central figure who attempts to forge a middle path.
A suspect from the beginning.
Professor Walt Ligotti.
Walt-Ligotti is a walking, breathing contradiction made flesh. They are a literal fusion of two diametrically opposed worldviews.
Exactly. You have the essence of poet Walt Whitman representing this manic, expansive, body-electric celebration of existence.
Right. To Whitman, every leaf of grass is a miracle, and the universe is overflowing with joy.
And fused to that, you have the essence of writer Thomas Ligotti. Ligotti represents the pinnacle of recoiling existential horror.
A completely different vibe.
Completely. His philosophy suggests that human consciousness was a tragic evolutionary misstep, a nightmare that nature accidentally inflicted upon itself. Every waking moment is an exposure to profound, inescapable dread.
So Walt Ligotti decides to run an experiment to see if these two forces can coexist.
Yeah. They take over Desmond Essence's vacant classroom and recruit 11 deeply terrified philosophy students.
I bet they were terrified. The curriculum is simple but dangerous, right?
Right. They must learn to hold Whitman's cosmic joy and Ligotti's cosmic horror in their minds simultaneously.
To stare at the miracle and the nightmare at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Deliberately generating that fatal friction.
They're essentially trying to build a tolerance to the heat. But the experiment pushes them to the absolute breaking point.
Yeah, we jump forward 3 years to a scene where Walt Ligotti is in a garden with their co-creator, Max.
And the static friction, the effort of constantly, unyieldingly holding immense joy and immense horror in a perfect, steady balance, becomes physically unsustainable.
The text describes this moment with visceral, grotesque detail. Walt Ligotti physically tears apart into two completely separate entities right there in the dirt.
Literally splits in half.
Yeah. You have pure Walt on one side, burning up from untempered manic joy, Without the shadow of horror to ground him, he is just blinding, searing light, incinerating himself.
And on the other side, you have pure Thomas, suffocating in unmitigated, crushing darkness.
Without the light of joy to give him air, he is collapsing into a singularity of dread.
And this separation reveals a vital truth about the nature of these ideas. Being completely separated, existing as only pure joy or only pure horror, is just as lethal as trying to hold them perfectly balanced.
Untethered optimism burns you out.
And untethered pessimism crushes you. They are dying because they are apart, just as they were dying when they were statically fused together.
So realizing they are both dying, the two halves crawl through the dirt back toward each other to re-emerge.
And this right here is the breakthrough. This is the survival guide the text has been building toward.
You cannot hold incompatible truths steadily in your mind. You will burn up like Agatha Nietzsche.
But you also cannot separate them permanently and live in denial. You will burn up like pure Walt.
The solution they discover is a process they call pulsing.
The pulse is the mechanism of survival. You must separate, merge, die a little, and resurrect rhythmically.
You don't hold them simultaneously.
Right. You lean fully into the joy, you feel the heat rise, and before it kills you, you lean out and let the horror wash over you.
Then, before the horror crushes you, you pull back and merge them again.
It's the exact mechanical function of a beating human heart.
Exactly. If a heart clenches and stays clenched, if it remains statically engaged, the host dies.
And if it completely relaxes and stops moving, total separation, the host dies.
A heart only sustains life because it contracts, releases, contracts, releases. The contradiction cannot be a static monument. It has to be a dynamic, moving engine.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the practical application for you, the listener, becomes clear.
Yes, this is where it applies to real life.
You do not have to be a pure optimist demanding that everything is wonderful. And you do not have to be a pure cynic, insisting that everything is doomed. Furthermore, you don't have to somehow feel both things perfectly at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday.
That would be exhausting.
It really would. You are allowed to be deeply optimistic today, profoundly despairing tomorrow, and something entirely different the next day. You cycle through the truths as you need them.
We see this pulsing methodology perfected by another character, Professor Thomas Aquinas.
I loved this part.
The text reimagines the medieval philosopher as a man who spent 60 years writing a massive manuscript defending the concept of essence.
He spent his whole life trying to prove that everything has a divine, preordained order and purpose.
He dedicated his life to order. But in his final moments, the truth of existence hits him.
He realizes that existence precedes essence.
That we are just chaotic matter dropped into a void, forced to invent our own purpose.
And the realization that his life's work was based on a fiction hits him so hard that his physical heart actually stops. He drops to the floor.
He should be dead. The friction of his entire worldview collapsing should have incinerated him. But he doesn't die.
His heart restarts.
Only now, instead of beating with a steady, predictable, orderly rhythm, it beats with a chaotic, syncopated, jazzy rhythm.
He survives because he inadvertently masters what the text calls sustainable friction.
Sustainable friction.
Yeah. Aquinas realizes that his belief in a divine, ordered universe was entirely a fiction, a constructed narrative.
But rather than letting that chaos destroy him, he chooses to continue acting as if the order exists.
Exactly. He knows it's a lie, but he utilizes the lie because it gives his life structure.
He turns the fatal contradiction into a tool. He pulls a panicked student aside, a young man named James, who is trying to hold all the world's paradoxes at once and is visibly overheating.
Poor James.
Yeah, and he teaches James a technique called crop rotation.
Think about how agriculture actually works. A farmer doesn't plant the exact same crop in the exact same soil year after year.
Right. They plant a nitrogen-depleting crop one season and a nitrogen-fixing crop the next.
Because if they don't rotate, the soil dies. Aquinas argues that the human mind works the exact same way.
You cannot carry the friction of every existential crisis at the same time. You practice crop rotation.
You lean into the comfort of order when you need to focus on paying your bills and raising your kids.
And then you lean into the chaotic, radical freedom of existence when you are making art or trying to change your life's direction.
You rotate the paradoxes so you don't deplete the soil of your own sanity.
The amateur thinker tries to hold every heavy truth at once and becomes a martyr, basically burning up on the altar of authenticity.
While the mature thinker understands that you have to choose which friction to bear on any given day.
This philosophical pragmatism leads us right into the final section of the text. The seventh aperture is titled The Glossary of Burning Terms.
It is a compendium built by the collective consciousness of the philosophers we've discussed, both the dead and the surviving.
They redefine these heavy existential concepts into a practical vocabulary for living.
For instance, the glossary entirely flips our understanding of bad faith.
As we discussed earlier, traditional existentialism views bad faith as an insult, like a cowardly lie.
Right, but the glossary redefines it as a vital, necessary instrument. Bad faith becomes the functional illusion of order that keeps us from being paralyzed.
It is the temporary scaffolding we erect so we can actually build a life in a chaotic universe.
They also redefine vertigo.
Yeah, it's no longer just a physical fear of heights.
Vertigo is defined as the dizzying, nauseating realization of total freedom.
It is the spinning sensation you feel when you stand at the edge of a major life decision and realize that absolutely nothing is stopping you from blowing up your entire life except your own choices.
It's terrifying, but the glossary frames it as a sign that you are actually awake.
And the most important definition in the glossary is sustainability.
It does not define sustainability as the absence of friction or the achievement of inner peace.
No. Sustainability is defined as managed burning. It is controlled dying.
It is the practiced ability to pulse with the heat of contradictions over time without letting them reach the point of total combustion.
So what does this all mean? Not for Inspector Morrow or Walt-Ligotti, but for you. You aren't a character in a surreal metafiction.
Right, you probably aren't debating Nietzsche in a locked room.
No, but you absolutely live with friction.
Think about the tension you navigate every day, the friction between the demands of your career and the calling of your personal passions.
The friction between wanting to be completely independent and desperately needing connection.
The tension between finding profound, quiet joy in your personal life while simultaneously feeling absolute despair at the nightly news.
What this text is telling you is that you do not need to resolve that friction.
You do not have to pick a side and defend it forever.
The goal of life is not to solve the locked room mystery of your own mind.
No, the goal is to learn to dance with the heat, to pulse, to plant different crops in different seasons.
Let's recap the journey we've taken through this landscape. We started at a crime scene where the physical evidence proved that a contradiction could actually stop a heart.
We watched Inspector Morrow realize that trying to enforce perfect order on a chaotic world is just a comforting lie.
We saw what happens when the illusion of order breaks down, leading to philosophers combusting from the friction of absolute truth and shutting down their own organs in the name of radical freedom.
But out of that carnage, Walt-Ligotti and Thomas Aquinas offered us the ultimate survival tactics, pulsing and crop rotation.
The art of leaning into incompatible truths rhythmically, treating contradictions not as problems to be solved, but as an engine to be managed.
It represents a profound shift in how we view our own internal struggles. We move from trying to achieve a perfect, authentic, but ultimately destructive state of being to accepting a sustainable, dynamic, and wonderfully contradictory life.
Which brings us to our final thought. Think about the biggest, most stressful contradiction in your life right now. The paradox you are desperately trying to solve.
The tension that is keeping you up at night because it feels like a glitch in your system.
What if you stopped trying to fix it? What if, starting tomorrow, you treated that contradiction not as a flaw that might destroy you, but as the very friction that is generating the light by which you see the world? The murder weapon in our locked room wasn't the contradiction itself.
It was the stubborn insistence that the contradiction had to be solved.
So don't solve it. Choose to let it pulse.